27th of July, 2024 at 11:29 a.m. here on Harstine Island, Washington, United States of America. Welcome once again to our cosmic journey, the story of a lowly dev and a lowly designer charting their path to making the world's best astrology software. Engineer Trey with me, and I'm designer Jake. Hello, Trey.
Hello, Jake.
I usually do the patter at this point, but I've decided that you are going to do the patter. What's going on in your mind right now?
We just got back from spending the evening in Port Orchard,
A beautiful town.
and yeah, beautiful town, and they had a really nice farmers market, which
This
we
is where I would
went and
normally
checked
show
out.
pictures. This is where I normally show pictures, if not, I
But
didn't have any. So there's no
no,
pictures
we
to
don't
be
have
shown right
any.
now.
Yeah. Yeah, and then Jake went into town yesterday and got feelings balls for our dog who hasn't had a good feelings ball in quite a while.
Yeah.
And so maybe you could show a picture
I'll show a picture of
for
him.
that.
Yeah, I'll show a still at this point of the feelings ball. It's very important. This feelings ball, by the way, cost $16.50 from Mud Bay. Crazy amount of money
Yeah,
that you spend for this. But you know what? His feelings
he loves
have
them.
no price.
Exactly.
They're
Exactly. He loves
invaluable.
them so. And
Yes.
he hasn't had like a real one for a little bit now. So
Yeah, exactly. This is episode 45. It is called A Time and a Place because we'll be showing a lot of point placements, which are points of a chart in
nice.
time. Trey's going to have the majority of the demo, but I'll have the check-in. And we're going to try to keep this one short because we actually did a lot of stuff this cycle. One other thing I would just say is that Trey and I have made a commitment to a specific date that we're going to ship the software. We're not ready to say that date on camera, but just know that it will happen before the end of 2024. It will probably happen. No, I'm not going to say the other thing. Just note that like we're going to try to not conflict with other either spiritual events or civic events. We'll just say it that way.
Yeah, I think it's also probably important to note that it is very likely to be a closed beta.
Yes. Yeah.
Um,
Good point.
yeah, so it's not going to be generally available. Well, we don't know when it's going to be generally available, but what we're targeting for this year is a closed beta release that we can put folks into. We're particularly looking for folks that are non-natal astrologers. Natal astrologers definitely welcome as well, but just it's a pure numbers game. There's just a lot more natal astrologers than there are electional astrologers, and particularly horary astrologers. So
Yeah.
if you are a practitioner of horary, we would love to hear from you, and we'll be reaching out to like a much broader audience and trying to figure out what's a good cohort to put into the beta
Yep.
and get that like initial beta feedback.
If you're interested in joining this beta, and especially if you are a practitioner of horary astrology or electional astrology, please write us at hello@cosmic.plumbing. You're seeing that email address on the screen right now. That's hello@cosmic.plumbing. Thumbs up. Love it. Uh,
Spelled exactly how you expect. Plumbing has a
hello.
B in it, just so you know.
Plumbing, as it turns out. Plumbing
Plumbing.
has a B in it. So
The
I
dog is pooping.
have a check-in for you. I apologize. I'm looking over here because this is where my camera's here, my setup's here. So I'm going to try to do my best to look over here. Check-in question, Mr. Henry. Are you ready?
Yes, I
Okay.
am ready.
So Demetra George has said in her book, The Ancient Astrology in Theory and Practice, if a planet is in its own bound lord, it has the autonomy and freedom to play by its own rules.
Interesting.
And so I have my question for you, Mr. Henry, and I just realized that I probably can't hear you when you're on that screen. So I'm going to quickly go to that screen and then come back to you. So your question is
Okay.
this: where do you have the autonomy and freedom to play by your own rules, Mr. Henry?
I think on my sailboat, um, like literally captain of that ship, and it's yeah, it's kind of like um, there's always the safety of the crew to take into account. But particularly when it's just me on the sailboat, then yeah, totally um, free to kind of like do things my way, I would say.
So on your sailboat, for me, I think
Yep.
it is anything where a conversation of boundaries or anything where a conversation of justice is happening. I am open to other people's opinions,
Mm.
but I'm setting the rules. People are playing in my playground then. And it's one of those times where I feel like I can actually hold court because I can't hold court really in anything else. But like when it comes to boundaries and like the idea of what is just and what is not just, there's a lot of people that come to me and allow me. So if regardless of what space that I'm in, I can always bring that part up, and for some reason, it always has a lot of focus towards me. I don't know why. It just has always been that way.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. I mean, it's very Saturn in the first in Virgo.
Yeah, exactly. By the way, my Saturn, according to ancient texts, is also has spear-bearing guards. All of my
Mm.
sectmates are dignifying it through, or bonifying it, excuse me, through spear-bearing guards. So I got that going on for me too. Thanks, Demetra, for teaching me how to calculate that. Let's go to Mr. Henry, though. We've got a little bit of a demo when it comes to point placement. Do you want to talk a little bit about what your objectives were this iteration and how you fared?
Yeah, so this iteration was mostly about finishing out the point placement card, which is now done according to what we wanted to get done for this iteration. We didn't get, or we I didn't get the implementation for popping up the point placement detail from interaction on the chart. So I just have to show it in the firmament at this point, but that is the very next step. So last time we showed the sort of beginnings of the speed graph, so I'll show not only that, but then essential dignity, traditional essential dignity, and kind of all of that cool stuff. One thing I wanted to show here as well is that when I started working on this and adding more functionality to the point placement card, the uh, that page within the firmament had become so populated with stuff. There was just so much stuff in one thing that it was actually slowing down the code editor to actually edit that file. So it was time to sort of like break things up and not just make it a single dumping ground for all things. So I did a little bit of work on the firmament to just make it a little bit easier to find things and to break things up. So now we have like a specific glyphs page and a specific UI core page, and so on and so forth. Native and event ring card, which we've shown in the past, and then point placement. Ta-da!
Yay!
So yeah, so like I said, we showed before sort of this part of it, which at that point in time did not have the average speed and also did not have the direction of movement.
Can you zoom in?
Yeah, but well, let me zoom in. Let me zoom in at the top because
Okay,
so
got it.
that's just the speed graph. I'll just show this part here, which is just the speed. Let me zoom in here. There we go. So yeah, so now it's with this is the top of the point placement card. So it's got like nice giant glyph there, which they just look great. Um, the actual placement in the chart, the house that it's in, if houses are available. So this is the variant with no house. Here's the variant with the house. So my Venus is in very, very barely in the eighth house. And forward movement, but slow in comparison to Venus's normal movement. I think there's probably, let's put a pin in the discussion around average speed. And then the movement, the direction, like if the planet is going heading towards faster or heading towards slower. And so then the next step was to do the what do you call like the middle card here, the point middle card, which is the traditional essential dignity. So domicile, lord, we have exaltation, triplicity, bound, deacon, detriment, and fall. All the good stuff that you would expect. And then there is highlighting for specific things. So let me actually just go here and show so that this doesn't become like the world's longest demo here. So this is what the complete card looks like. And this is showing my sun. So for the sun, obviously we don't show the speed because that's meaningless for the sun, and house that it's in, and then I can switch around here to show. And so for the moon, there's going to be more information that we show here around moon speed and also moon phase. But that's not in here yet, but will be soon. But you can also see that, so my moon is placed in Taurus and is exalted in Taurus. Also is the off sect. So the ordering here is on sect or insect, triplicity
Insect.
lord in in
That's
sect.
reminding me of yesterday's, or sorry, last week's
Yeah,
a bug's tail. You can see up
yeah,
there, insect.
in sect.
We would say, yeah,
uh,
I think we'd say same sect or contrary sect, but yes, I
yeah,
got
yeah,
you.
same sect, contrary sect, and then participating or cooperating. Um, yeah, bound lord, blah blah blah, all the same stuff there. And then, of course, if I go over to my Mercury, and while I was working on this, one of the fun things about working on astrology software is that you get to explore um, your chart. Usually, I use my chart a lot for
Yeah,
test data, and you get to
yeah.
explore your chart in lots and lots of detail. And here's my just absolutely wrecked Mercury, retrograde, and in detriment and fall in Pisces. Um, yeah,
If you're
just
wondering
just
why
a
Trey's communication
mess.
style is we've it's been an ongoing
This
theme, but this is the
this is why.
scientific proof right here.
Yeah, this exactly, exactly. So yeah, so anyway,
So before you move on,
this yeah.
let's talk about planetary speed for a second. You're showing
Yeah,
Mercury.
yeah, yeah.
Let's show, and you're showing
Let's show Venus.
Venus. Can you go to Venus as well?
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah, yeah.
what Trey is showing here is astronomically speaking, this is correct, and
Actually,
it's a
let's look at
little
this.
bit hard. Thank you for going down there. It's a little bit hard to see, but Venus's average speed, astronomically speaking, is somewhere around 90% of this bar.
Yes,
However,
which is why this line is so far over here.
correct. However, I'm going to share my screen here. So let's go to my screen for a second. This is Demetra George's Ancient Astrology in Theory and Practice. This is me deconstructing that. And you will see here that table 20 shows that planetary speed for Mercury and Venus is 59 minutes per day, which is the same as the sun. And actually, now that I'm looking at this, she has not minutes, she has seconds. She has 59 seconds per day, which is incorrect. That should be minutes. That's the incorrect symbol.
Yes, that's true.
We're here to help you, Demetra George. Feel free to let us know if we can help you with your editing in the future. But so that means 59 minutes per day, and says same as the sun. This is the same as John Frawley, who has written a wonderful book called The Horary Textbook, which has been referred to many times. John Frawley is amazing. Frawley and Demetra George and Kelly Surtees, and probably Chris Brennan, although he doesn't really care about planetary speed, all use this 59 minutes per day for Mercury and Venus. The question for you then, Mr. Henry, is, and we've asked this week, and it's a little bit of the discussion we're having today, do we do what is astronomically sound, or do we do what's sound in the tradition? And I'm wondering if you want to talk a little bit about like your thoughts and feelings about that, because I've got different thoughts and feelings about it.
Yeah, it's a really interesting topic because, and it's something we definitely go back and forth on. And I think the community, like the astrological community, definitely goes back and forth on, because you were very political there in your description of Demetra George's numbers, which they're not just from her, right? Like that's in
No.
Fowley's book on horary. That's in a number of texts, and it's just
But
wrong.
it seems like everyone is just. We can't tell whether this is in the tradition or whether everyone just used the same shortcut, and it's weird to us.
Yeah, yeah. But the important thing is that it's actually wrong. It's
It is
astronomically
wrong.
incorrect.
Yeah.
And so then the question is, what's more important? Is it more important to be to be astrologically correct, and then allow for interpretation, or is it better to sort of honor the tradition, even if the tradition has things which are incorrect in it? And correct, I'm putting here correct in quotes, as in astronomically correct versus like correct from a usage perspective, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So
And
so
so
this is using
yeah, and
astronomical data. This is exactly what we're talking about here. When you
yeah,
see Venus, it says the typical speed percentage on that graph is 91.88%.
yeah,
Mercury
yeah, and if you're
73.62%.
yeah, and if you're curious about that, and you're like, well, how can the average be 91.8%? It's because Venus is generally speaking moving pretty close to its max speed. Most of
Yeah.
the time, it's moving pretty close to its max speed. And then when she goes retrograde for those periods of time, in comparison to the rest of the time, it's not nearly as much as like Mercury, for example. And so yeah, so overall, her apparent motion is mostly direct, which is why it's technically like 92% of
Yeah.
normal of max speed. But then, so if you're interpreting, because this is where it really comes down to like the rubber meets the road or the brass tacks. Uh, you what does it mean for somebody's Venus to be fast or slow?
Correct.
Like how do you decide whether or not a particular planet is fast or slow in somebody's chart? And that's really what those graphs are about, like the one that's
Right.
in
Those
Demetra
lines.
George's book. However, the interesting thing about that, and this is another thing that can you bring that back up actually?
Which one?
The Demetra George's
Yeah.
table.
Let me go back to
Which we're
that.
saying it's Demetra George's table. It's just the table that she's put into
It's
the
just
book,
the,
which
yeah, the table in her book.
yeah, it's common. Yeah, so if you like, the thing that's really odd here about this is the rest of these, besides Mercury and Venus, are actually pretty close.
Oh,
Um,
they're
and and it's
insanely close.
yeah, it's weird that like for Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn, it's very close to the astronomical number. So, like, it's like 31.444 degrees, right? Like that's very specific versus 0 degrees 59 minutes, same as sun. And so the question is like, why are Mercury and Venus handled this way, whereas
But
everything
Saturn,
else
Jupiter, and
is
Mars are
like
insanely precise.
accurate? Yeah,
Yeah.
or precise. Yeah. Even though it's
Yeah.
not it's not exactly, but they're close. They're really close.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's really an interesting thing. If you
I would
have
love to ask
opinions or
them.
thoughts about this, yeah, yeah, or you gentle viewer, if you have opinions or thoughts about this, it would be really interesting to know. For some of these things, like one of the things that happened is a little bit of a tangent, but it's related. One of the things that happened in Urania when I was implementing lunar mansions, was I was going off of the oh God, I can't remember whose translation of the Picatrix, but I hadn't really thought a ton about it, and how actually just very straightforward it is to calculate the lunar mansions. And so I was using these like degree ranges from this ancient text, from a translation, and they were all a bit wobbly, and then one was just like wildly off. Well, it turns out the one that was wildly off was just an error in the translation, but also there was this interesting tendency back in the day to create tables of things, to do the calculation and then create tables of things, probably because the calculation, even very simple calculations, might not have been like broadly understood or broadly known. So it's easier just to say like this lunar mansion goes from this to this. But really all you have to do is take the ecliptic and divide it 29 times or 28 times, depending upon the system you're
Depending,
using.
yeah, if you're using non-chakras
And
or
that's
yes.
that's very straightforward math, and then you know exactly the number of degrees for each mansion. And so that's what I eventually ended up going with. But then I had this conversation with multiple people about it. It's like, oh yeah, like yeah, the mansions in the I think it was the Atrell one, like one of them is off or something, translation. But anyway, yeah. So there there's always this dialogue that we're having between like the astronomical precision, the astrological tradition, sort of what things have kind of like become part of the tradition, whether or not they are, um, like intentional. Like sometimes there's these like intentional errors that sort of like creep it. You see this a lot in like grimoire traditions as well, where people are practitioners that are using like a grimoire that's been like copied and copied and copied and copied, and sometimes errors are introduced. But then those errors actually become yes, thank you, buddy. Those errors become
Doc has a lot of opinions
part.
about this as well.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. He's very opinionated, much like me. Uh, these errors become part of the tradition over time. And then, you like, yeah, they're just in there then.
Yeah.
So anyway, all that to say that I think our sort of what we're doing now is we're kind of like putting our best foot forward, which is to um, try to be astronomically accurate, but also provide support for what we understand of the tradition so that you can do the type of interpretation that you want to do easily.
Yeah.
And then we're just going to get feedback on it. We're
Yeah.
just going to put it
Exactly.
in front of people. And this is like the whole thing with the M1 beta is we're just going to put it in front of people and get people's opinions, get people's perspectives, and find out how people actually feel about it. Because at the end of the day, that's the only thing that matters.
If you have opinions or perspectives, let us know in the comments below or write
Yes,
us at
please.
hello@cosmic.plumbing. It's got a B. Okay. Back to your demo. Go ahead, Mr. Henry.
Oh, I think demo's over. Yeah, yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
demo's over. Okay.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
that
so
was it.
the only other thing that I wanted to bring up then is, if I do this then, is Mr. Henry had talked about how we might be adding or changing these things. It's very typical for us to do that. One of the things that I've been really enjoying about Demetra George's book is that chapter 56 or whatever, like almost the end of the book, goes through all of the points of planetary condition and talks about sect, zodiacal sign rulerships, domicile lords, speed, phase intensification, witnessing, bonification, or maltreatment. And what I'm doing is recapitulating what she says and to prove through here that each of these things are things that we cover or will cover soon. And I have gone through this stuff and I've been like, ooh, I missed some stuff here. And ooh, sect relationship to Triplicity Lord was messy and blah. So I'm going through all of this stuff, blah, blah, blah. You can tell I'm in solar phase right now. And I'll tell you, of all of the things that are in that book, that is what I covered the poorest because I don't think I understood it until the very end. So just to know, that thing that Mr. Henry had shown on the screen is something that we will be improving as we do this, what I call the chapter 56 learning of this book, and making sure that we're cross-referencing that against what Chris Brennan is saying and cross-referencing that to what modern astrologers are saying as well. I'm actually very excited. I have a hold on a couple of books from Demetra George when she was more of a modern astrologer. And I'm very excited to read these things because I want to see the change in their perspectives. I get very excited about stupid stuff like this.
Yeah, I love
Anyways,
that too. Also,
yeah,
another thing that we've talked about doing as well. I'm like super getting blasted by the sun now.
I understand.
Um,
We're going to move very quickly. Yes.
no, 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 it's totally fine. I just was acknowledging, like, if you're wondering in the video why I'm so shiny, this is why. It's the blasted sun. uh, but we talked about doing documentation for the documentation for Cosmic, actually having all of these references that Jake was just talking about, like all of the different sources that we use for understanding, like, because it's not just Demetra George's book, it's like Chris Brennan's book, it's Fowley's Horary book. It's like, I mean, we have stacks and stacks of books.
Yeah. Charles
Um,
Obert, Frowley, Brennan,
yeah. Um,
Channy Nicholas. We also
yeah.
have Asavar and the folks from Portugal. I can never pronounce their names. Who wrote
Yeah.
on the Heavenly
And this is just
Spheres?
like yeah, and this is just like mostly modern books,
Yeah,
or like modern authors, drawing from traditional sources. But then we also, like we have Firmicus Maternus, like
I
under
have
the thing.
quoted
We,
Firmicus as well
yeah,
in the
we have
documentation. Yes.
we have the Picatrix. We have like, so when we start getting into more electional stuff, anyway, like we use a lot of source material to do our best to design the software, and we thought that it would be really good actually to provide those references to people in the documentation to say, here's what we were looking at when we designed this feature, and this is what you can go and look at if you're more interested on this topic, or like
Yeah.
why we made the decisions that we made.
Correct. Because we're going to have to make
So
decisions. Not everything is going to be
yeah,
up for debate, and we have to say we're making a decision here, and we're going to do this, and you can give us feedback about that decision. However, we want to be clear about like how the decision was made. What did we reference? What did we not reference? And if
yeah,
someone comes in and says, it's great that you referenced ancient astrology in theory and practice. However, I do find that Deborah Holding's book on the houses maybe has a different take on maybe some interpretation of the houses. And like, okay, good.
yeah,
We can take a look at that and get Deb Holding stuff in here as well, for
yeah, yeah.
example.
Yeah, who's a contentious figure in
Well,
astrological
just for
circles.
the whole sign house stuff, but we don't have to talk about that.
Yeah.
Anyways, great video. We said it was going to be short and we're going long. Mr. Henry, what should the viewer do today?
The viewer should. What have we not done in the past? I mean, it's such a beautiful day. We've got family coming over. You should.
The viewer should play pickleball today.
Oh yeah, play pickleball. Great game.
If you don't know what pickleball is, take a look up there. Look at that video because it's amazing. Go find some people, find one person, find 3 people, find some paddles, find a net, go play pickleball. Have yourself a lovely weekend or whatever day you watch this video. We love you very much. Take care. We will see you soon. Goodbye.
Bye.